Nope.
Hello and welcome to Tokyo Shutter Speed, where we talk cars and car photography. My name is Rick and today we've come down to the Izu Peninsula to look for some seashells. Now, where can I find myself a nice little seashell? Ah, here we go. I got one. Why in the world are we looking for seashells, you ask? Well, today's car was actually inspired by a seashell. It's the super cute Toyota IQ. As usual, we're going to show you around the car, take it for a spin, and then go take some photos. Let's go. Because this cute little car was inspired by a shellfish, we decided to bring it on a little ocean drive. So today we're down in Shimoda on the Izu Peninsula. When designing the IQ, Toyota's design team used a technique called freeform geometrics. Here, designers used mathematical formulas to emulate organic forms like seashells. Now all of that is very complicated and it hurts my brain a little bit, but the end product was this super cute and mind-bogglingly small but roomy form factor. Now, I've always been a fan of the IQ because I actually think it looks really cool. But the one we've got today is pretty special. This is actually the IQ GRMN, as you can see from this quite large sticker. This is a special limited edition version which is tuned by Toyota's Gazoo Racing team. They only made 100 of these and they were all sold in Japan. So this means it's one of the rarest cars we've ever driven in terms of numbers produced. It was announced in August of 2009 and it was sold out before it even went on sale in November of that year. We'll get to what exactly the Gazoo team did with this in a moment, but first let's talk about the design. So this is less than 3 meters long, 1, 2, 3, which makes it shorter than the original Mini and only slightly longer than a Smart 4.2, which seats only 2 people. However, this manages to seat 4 people. Well, 3.5, but we'll get to that in a moment. How Toyota managed this sub 3 meter 4-seater is really impressive. When it was launched in 2008, it was some of the most innovative design in the car industry, and it won Japan Car of the Year before it even went on sale. Basically, Toyota went back to the drawing board with each component. They looked at how each part could be miniaturized in order to fit a fully working car and 4 people into the smallest shell possible. The IQ had 6 major space-saving innovations. First was a front-mounted differential, then a center take-off steering gear, a flat underfloor fuel tank, ultra-slim seat design, a compact heating air conditioning unit, and last but not least, asymmetric dashboard design. Now, unless you pull the car apart, you won't be able to see many of these innovations, except for one which is very obvious. And that's the asymmetric dashboard design. The dash is shallow on the passenger side, which enables the passenger to sit slightly forward of the driver. This means there's enough room to fit a fully sized adult in the back, quite comfortably actually. Now this is where the amazement ends, and we get to the 1+3 thing I mentioned earlier. So, you can only really fit a full-size adult behind the passenger seat because the passenger seat sits slightly forward. Now, if I pull this passenger seat forward, you can see there's plenty of room for an adult in there, and I'm going to jump in. So I can pull this back. There's the thingy. There we go. And I actually have plenty of room. Decent knee room, plenty of headroom. Right, so I'm pretty comfy back here, but there is like 0 room behind the driver. I could probably sit like this, but there's no way I'm getting my legs behind this seat if I'm in my regular driving position. So that's why Toyota pitched this as a 3+1. 3 full-size adults and a baby. Actually, let's see if we can fit 4 full-size adults in here. So that actually worked pretty well. Now let's have a look at the interior. So I mentioned how the car's design was inspired by seashells, and the interior design was actually inspired by a manta ray, which you can see here from this V-shaped center console. Now Toyota called this design thinking techno-organic. Don't really know what it means, but it sounds pretty cool. So I guess that a lot of design and technological innovation comes from people looking at the flora and fauna around them. So I think it's pretty cool that Toyota went with this approach. And in the cabin, you can actually see a bunch of like sea life design cues. Like this little speaker here kind of reminds me of a pearl. And even in the gauge cluster, the speedometer has kind of a shellfish design to it. Pretty cool. All right, now let's have a look at the boot. And we have very, very little space in here. Now the boot is where you have to start making decisions. You have to choose between people and stuff. Maybe this is some real deep messaging by Toyota to encourage IQ owners to think about the value of friends and family versus material possessions. Or not. With people in the back, you cannot have things. Well, you could have maybe a few Harry Potter books, but probably not the Goblet of Fire, because I remember that being quite thick. So if you want to ditch your family and friends for material possessions, or just take your best mate or your loving partner on a two-person trip to the beach, then you need to fold down the back seats. Without passengers in the back, with the seats folded down, you actually get some decent trunk space, more than enough for a trip to the shops or a short weekend getaway. Oh, and while we're here, this car is actually really highly rated for safety. It had a 5-star crash test rating, and there are 9 airbags inside this cabin, which is pretty crazy because it's so small. And among those 9 airbags, one of those is a world first, this rear window airbag. So in the event of a rear end collision, the whole rear window will blow up into an airbag so you don't get killed. So, not a whole lot of car, but plenty to talk about. Now let's get her on the road and see how she drives. Alright, driving the Toyota IQ GRMN. That's a lot of letters for a little car. So right now we're up on the Izu Skyline, which is a big long toll road going along the Izu Peninsula, and it is amazing. One of the coolest roads I've ever driven on in Japan. It's up there with like the Hakone Turnpike. Let's give her a bit of welly here. Okay, so how is this Gazoo Racing version of the IQ different to the standard one? Well, first of all, the Gazoo Racing team gave it sport suspension lowered by 30mm and extra bracing to improve handling. And you can feel it. Like the ride is firm, you can throw it into bends, and you don't get that much body roll, even for a car of this size. And yeah, handles surprisingly well. There we go. Yes, please. And it's actually, the steering is quite responsive considering like it's a tiny little car with like a wheel at each corner. It doesn't have the body to be driven like this, but for some reason, wow, the Gazoo team did a really good job with this handling. This is a lot of fun to throw around. Okay, so the next thing they did is they gave it a 6-speed manual transmission. And this kind of puzzles me because it still has the same 1.3 litre 97 horsepower engine as the regular IQ. Well, that engine was one of the options with the IQ. So like, why did they give it a 6-speed? I mean, were they expecting that people would tune the car? So they set them up with a decent transmission? I don't know. But yeah, the gear ratios are quite long, and ooh, yes. This is so much fun. Yeah, the gear ratios are quite long. There we go. Sorry, I keep distracting myself. The gear ratios are quite long, and I rarely get into 6th. Like even on the motorway, like I was cruising along at 5th, and you know, considering the top speed of this is only about 170 kilometers an hour, I don't really see the need for the 6th gear. So, ここは見えるかな？
これだと思う、これだと思う。
本当？ OK、止めといて。So the Gazoo Racing team also put disc brakes on the back of this car, which is hilarious to see because the car is so tiny. But you know, they actually work. Like when you're coming into a bend, slow you down nicely so you can turn the nose in and slingshot your way out. Yee-hoo, this is great. Oh man, I'm having so much fun driving this car. This is actually a bag of fun to throw around. So then the last of the upgrades or tunes that the Gazoo Racing team made to this car was a Gazoo Racing styling package. So they gave it sportier bumpers, a few stickers around the car, aluminium pedals and some mud flaps, because you always need mud flaps. So overall, this is a great little package. Like I said earlier, I've always been a fan of the IQ, and if you're looking for, you know, a compact city car that, in my opinion, looks really, really good, the IQ is awesome. And today we've got this, you know, special edition IQ GRMN, and the improvements to the handling that the Gazoo Racing team have made this little thing so much fun to throw around. I'm actually having a blast with it here today. However, and there's a however, there's a but. Considering this was around 2.2 million yen new, I'm pretty disappointed they didn't give it any extra power. This has the exact same 1.3 97 horsepower engine that was available in the regular IQ. And it just seems like a missed opportunity. I feel like if they gave this little thing a bit more power, although it's fun, like just with the standard 97 horsepower because it's so small and nimble, I think it would be an epic little car if they gave it more power. Now, a couple of years after this came out, Toyota went and made a supercharger version of this, which had pretty much the same upgrades as this one, but with a little bit extra power, but only about 20 horsepower. So the supercharged version had 122 horsepower, but that was 3.5 million yen. So that's 1.5 million yen for an extra like 20-30 horsepower. We actually worked it out. They worked out at like 60,000 yen per horsepower. That's just too much money for a car of this size with this level of practicality, even though it is a lot of fun. Look at this. Yes. Oh my god, she just grips and grips and grips. This is amazing. Wow. Good morning! Welcome to Sleepy Shutter Speed. It's like just past 6 a.m. here. We came down to this beach on the east side of the Izu Peninsula to catch the sunrise. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cloud, so the sun should actually be behind that bunch of grey cloud over there, but it still looks pretty cool. Alright, so now we've changed the position of the car, trying to get a side profile shot. So I absolutely love the side profile of this car, it's so cute. Okay, I think this composition is pretty good. We'll go to about 35mm so we can see the entire beach and a nice bit of the background. The only thing is I need a little bit more height here, so let's pull this up a bit. Decent footing on my flimsy tripod. Oh god, that's nerve-wracking. Yeah, you know, landscape photography isn't really my thing, so I'm not really sure what the best settings are. For that reason, I'm just trying a bunch of different things. Like now I've changed my aperture from f8 to f22, so I've got like more in focus, and that also lets me use an even slower shutter speed. So I think having an even slower shutter speed will let the ocean look a little smoother and milkier. And again, just try a bunch of different exposures, and you can pick what you like the best in post. So playing with my shutter speed a bit. Click. Change it up again. Click. Change it up again and click. Right, so finally the sun came up, so we got some pretty sweet photos with the sun just coming up. And I'm down at the beach here. There's this little like shack with ramen and sambazushi. So we thought it was pretty cool to just pop the IQ there and take a photo in front of the old shack, the ramen shack. Alright, I think that's about it for this location. Should we move on to the next one? Let's go! Okay, so we're up on the Izu Skyline and we just found a perfect spot, and we've been really lucky with the weather because look at this, we've got Fuji-san peeking his head out through the clouds. This is amazing. Now, usually I'd get out my tripod right away and set up the perfect shot, but because I'm scared that like the clouds might cover him or something, I'm gonna take a few handheld shots first, and then if we still have time, I'll get out the tripod and like try and set up a really nice composition. So let's go. We've got a few handheld shots, and I actually think we've got enough time to get out the tripod. Let's see if we can try something cool. So let's get that up. Okay, let's go a little bit higher. This is the scariest part because this tripod is so flimsy. Oh, Ferrari 260. Okay, before we do the next video, let's get a new tripod because this thing is shy. Right, so I've got my big silly ass flimsy tripod here, and I'm just trying a few different compositions because there's trees on the left hand side and then Fuji's on the right, so I thought the best balance would be to face the car away from the trees rather than towards the trees. So now I'm just getting a few different options with like Fuji-san on the top right of the frame, Fuji-san right above the car, and I'll try a few other things to see how it goes. Okay, that looks alright. Yeah, okay, and I think that was it. Fuji-san is just starting to go back into the clouds. So let's put away the tripod. before we go, I'll take a few more handhelds and see how they go. But yeah, pretty happy with those shots. Let's keep going. So this is one of the photos we took at the beach while we were waiting for the sun to come up. This is the raw photo as shot, and it may look like the sky is blown out, but I actually exposed it just so that we could pull the highlights back in post. Here's what the final edit looks like. I cropped it to portrait, played with some of the colour sliders in Lightroom to pull out the beautiful tones we were seeing in the morning sky, did my usual edits to create some contrast, and this time I actually went and played with some dodge and burning in Photoshop to make the car pop. As the sun started to come up, the sky got much brighter, so I decided to try blending multiple exposures. Here on the left, I exposed for the foreground, and on the right, exposed for the sky. I stacked them in Photoshop, and here's how it turned out. As the sun had come up, the colour tones of the whole scene changed completely, and we got this beautiful warm vibe. It's definitely not a perfect blend, as I'm by no means a Photoshop expert, but it's cool to see the different results you can get by stacking multiple exposures. Next, we parked the car in front of this cute little ramen shack that was on the beach, and I decided to go with a side profile here because I love the side profile of this car, and it flowed well with the signs on the ramen shack. So here are some of the photos we took up on the Izu Skyline. We actually got really lucky with the weather here, and we had a window of about 10 minutes where Mount Fuji was visible through the clouds. I tried a few different compositions and focal lengths. Here's how Fuji appeared at 50mm. And here's how a longer focal length made it appear bigger. This was shot at 75. It was pretty overcast on the day, so the sky wasn't very interesting, but I made it feel a little bit more dramatic by playing with the dehaze slider in Lightroom. Tried a few different compositions here too, Fuji on the right, Fuji just above the car, and also tried this funky low angle, which turned out pretty cool. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Right, that's a wrap for today. We're just coming off the Izu Skyline. Well, we're still kind of in the middle of it, which is why it looks like we're in the woods here. But what a road. Absolutely love it. I'll definitely leave a link to the location in the description below. Like I said earlier, I've always been a fan of the IQ because I think it's a super cool design. And you know, to be honest, when we first got the car, I was a little disappointed by the lack of power. Very little straight line speed. It takes an age to get to 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour. But this thing isn't about straight line speed. We were planning on driving it down the Izu Skyline, and boy am I glad we did, because once you get it on a bendy road, this thing comes to life. You know, considering they didn't put any extra power into this car, what the Gazoo Racing team have done with this thing is pretty crazy. It is so much fun to throw around bends, even though it's like this tiny little weirdly shaped body. It's just an absolute blast to drive. And another thing that happened today is a bunch of people actually came up and asked us questions about the car. This one guy was like, "What, is that a K car? Why does it look so cool?" And another guy was like, "Oh wow, that's Gazoo Racing, I love that shit." So, you know, we realized that this is like a sports car disguised as a K car, but then there's also a huge fan base for Gazoo Racing, and when you meet a Gazoo fan in a Gazoo car, they go pretty crazy, so that was cool to see. Yeah, I guess that's about it for today. Again, please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed our content, and yeah, as usual, if you have any suggestions for cars you want us to feature or places you'd like us to go and photograph, please let us know in the comments, and we will see you next time.